Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Yes in Town and I'm Faisal Rahman. Today we'll be talking to Muhammad Nazir Saab. Muhammad Nazir Saab is by profession a lawyer. To be very exact, he is a solicitor. Now we'll ask him what is the difference between a lawyer, a solicitor or a barrister. Based in London, presently he's working with a law firm known as Wasco Brown. And he is with us as a guest today in our program. Thank you very much, Nazir Saab, for taking out your time and joining us here in our studio. Let's start off with a very basic question, because when I Googled your details last night, something very interesting came up. Normally, whenever somebody goes to UK, they end up becoming barrister, like Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, for instance. So what is the primary difference between a solicitor and a barrister? Aren't they both legal experts?
Thank you very much. Basically, both are lawyers. There's a very minor difference, and they're equal. Solicitors normally take the instructions and prepare the cases, and mostly they do non-contentious work, and barrister's role is to represent the case within the court of law or in the tribunal. So basically, the main job of a barrister is to represent the client in the court of law or a tribunal, and solicitors are in the background. But there are certain solicitors who can have a high right of audience. And even being a solicitor and advocate from Pakistan, I can use those rights and I can represent a client in the court of law. So there is not much difference between these two.
Okay, so what sort of cases, normally a barrister represent as compared to a solicitor?
They can take all sorts of cases, but normally what is happening in that legal system, there is not a lot of litigation. Mostly cases are settled out of court.
Okay.
Because the reason is, litigation is very, very expensive in the UK. So that's why people prefer to resolve their issues out of court.
Through some arbitration or something of that sort?
Yes, you may say it's arbitration and some kind of negotiations between solicitors prior to trial, and they resolve their issues before trial.
Because normally it is believed that in the Western world, the lawyer is normally hired on the percentage basis. That, for example, if you win this case and you end up getting, for example, an insurance case or anything of that sort, you end up claiming that amount. So anyway, now moving on. So what made you think to move to UK once you obtained a degree of law in Pakistan? So how come and when?
After becoming a solicitor and advocate in Pakistan, I decided to move to UK because my missus was from there.
Okay, and which year was that?
I moved there in 2001.
Okay, so almost 12, 13 years ago.
Exactly,
right.
And by the grace of God, I qualified within 2 years, and I become a solicitor. And but in early days, there was a lot of struggle.
So does our degree of law, is that accepted in UK?
Of course, it is accepted. Okay. What I did QLTT, and now it has been changed as a QLTS.
Okay.
It's the combination of qualified lawyers transfer test.
Okay.
So you have to go through the whole English legal system, and you have to go a very detailed exam. Even there is one exam which you will like it, that it's called oral exam. There will be 2 barristers and 1 retired judge. He will cross-examine you on a...
It's a sort of a viva.
Exactly. And it's a very, very crucial exam, because there will be like a full TV rehearsal or a program, because lights are on, cameras on, so you have a lot of pressure.
Is that being recorded too?
Exactly, because they do. The reason is because some students might be challenging their marks. They say, we presented our case or we did our exam very well, so that's why they recorded it as evidence.
Okay, that's very interesting. So the evidence is there. This is the first time what I've heard. But anyway, how would you differentiate, because primarily Indo-Pak subcontinent was a part where the UK, they ruled, British, they ruled. So primarily, for example, the right-hand drive and so many other laws are all British laws here. So is there any major difference which you can identify, or primarily it's the same?
I think if we will compare any subcontinent jurisdictions, I will name India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they are following the English legal system.
Okay.
But here in our country, we don't have a jury in Pakistan, but in English legal system, they have a jury and a judge. For the question of fact, they use jury, and for the question of law, the judge will decide that.
But when we say that we have, for example, 3-member bench, so 3-member bench, isn't that a jury?
No.
How would you differentiate this?
Because jury is a private individual. They are not legally qualified. They will be the layman. Either you could be a juryman, I could be a juryman,
so
or
a person who is in jury could be anybody.
Exactly.
Could be a doctor even.
Anybody. They will pick up, it's called jury service.
Okay.
And every citizen in UK, almost in once a life, they get a chance to become a jury member. And they have to sit to decide a case.
So as a neutral person, as a neutral member of that panel,
Exactly.
what they do is they hear the case and then they decide. But so don't you think this is pretty technical and you need to know all those, for example, those technical terms and clauses and everything?
That's a very good question. Because as you mentioned in the previous question, what happened, the judge decided the question of law, the question of facts and all evidence and the representation from the both sides, from the defense and from the prosecution, are put together in front of jury, and they pick up the whether guilty or non-guilty.
So that's pretty interesting. And all sorts of cases.
Mostly criminal cases, and in civil litigation, the judge is the deciding power.
Okay, Nazir Saab, now moving on to, since you're a very successful lawyer there, I'll use the word lawyer because that covers most of the aspects.
That's
also.
fine.
So now you're a partner with that firm, Wasco Brown. So how big is that firm? Tell us about that.
We have almost 12 lawyers. We have approximately 85 staff, and we have 6 partners. And it's quite interesting for our listeners, and especially for youngsters. It is worth mentioning here that I joined them as a trainee legal clerk. I used to do in my early days photocopying, the basic job, just typing and these type of things. But with the passage of time, when I passed my all exams, I promoted to as a lawyer, then as a head of department.
And I'm sure as a person who was working there as like an internee maybe, it must have been of great help for you to understand the concept and prepare for the main exam.
I think you picked up a very good, I think the very basic thing. It was very good. Similarly, if a paramedic is working in operation theatre with a very senior surgeon, then it's very helpful for him. Similarly, I got a lot of help from those solicitors when I was doing my professional exams, and this was the key for my success.
All right. Now moving on to, for example, there are a lot of young lawyers who go abroad to study law. Would you recommend the British law system or the American law system, or maybe some other country where they teach law, or primarily it's the same, or what is the difference? What's the core difference?
I think I don't feel any difference, because at the end of the day,
as compared to USA,
at the end of the day, the judge has to decide on evidence and the basic principles of the whole world, and it's called principle of natural justice. There are quite few, because time frame is, and the time is the essence in this program, because all the jurisdiction in the whole world, they follow the same principle. The only difference you might be, as I mentioned, jury and judge, as we don't have a jury, but in UK or in the other jurisdiction, you find a jury. So the basic concept of law and the basic philosophy is same, that you have to reach and you have to conclude to the justice.
Okay, that's very interesting. So when you look at Pakistan, unfortunately, there are issues, and there are very legitimate issues. For example, if somebody goes to to the very basic session court I'm talking about, there are a lot of ifs and buts, and most of these people are not educated, not aware of their rights even, for instance, and when they go, they're ridiculed at various levels. So don't you think there should be a department to facilitate those people? Because we normally talk about the Supreme Court, we know all the names of all the judges and everybody, but where the actual problem lies is the very grassroots level, and where the session court is. What sort of areas where you see the weaknesses, and how sort of make sure that they should be eradicated?
Very nice question, actually. I will appreciate it, because I think in the criminal justice system, the police system is very, very important. But unfortunately, the basic of a criminal case starts from FIR, which is first information report, which is the basis of the investigation. What is happening that in our system, the basic system starts with the FIR, but when it goes to officers or the system which is already corrupt, I think that's the basic. And the second thing, the basis of litigation is the legal record, which is our Patwar system, and also the land registration. I have noted that there are so many cases pending in front of honorable judiciary and lower courts and the higher courts, where one plot of land or a piece of land or a particular property was sold 3 times, 4 times, even some cases 4 times. Unfortunately, there are 4 claimants there. But that is the problem. I think what the government should do, they need to change the police system, because that is the basis of a criminal justice system. And unfortunately, we don't have a very good evidence collection laboratories there. As compared to, if we will compare with English legal system, they have a very, very strong forensic
crime scene is so important, and unfortunately I've seen that, you know, when we watched various movies and there's a crime scene, they just cordon off the area.
I will not hesitate to mention.
So out here in Pakistan, you know, so I've practically seen, you know, policemen smoking a cigarette and just, you know, playing around with the proofs, which is very unfortunate.
It's worth mentioning here, because this is for information and educational program, that it is unfortunate, even a very prime case, Mohtamma Benazir Bhutto's case, it was quoted by all the international media that after this tragic incident, the whole crime scene was washed.
Yes.
I think this is very crucial, and it is a very, very serious.
And very senior policemen and officers were dismissed over that as well. And nobody was claiming the responsibility of who ordered that. So there are a lot of problems, a lot of questions.
I think we should
look at the level and the magnitude of that particular
case. Because that procedure is used under the Criminal Procedure Code, so that is our CRPC. I think that needs to be amended. They should add some new amendments, especially for the forensic evidence and evidence collecting, and also preserving the evidence. This is very important, because there are so many cases which has been gone in wasted because the court could not conclude it very well. Even there was weaknesses in the trial, and also the weaknesses in the statements when it was collected from the witnesses. So it is very, very vital. And similarly, in our record system, we need to revolutionize our patwar system, because it's a patwar is a typical.
Practically looking after that issue even in Punjab, in KPK primarily, where all those, you know, one of my friends, I mean, he was from UK as well, and he came to Pakistan, and he was shown that concept of latta, and he said, how can you get it photostated? I mean, that huge, you know, bed sheet of
exactly, yeah.
You know, so there are a lot of question marks, and I'm sure we're moving in the right direction. But moving on again, sir, primarily one more technical question, and then I'll move on to the softer side. What would you recommend all those youngsters who are watching this program right now, and they're getting very inspired by you, that you have done your law in Pakistan and now you're a partner in UK in one of a very renowned firms there in law. What would you recommend? I mean, how to study, and I mean those who want to make a career in law, what should they do?
I think the very simple thing is work hard, and the second thing is the schools. I will request schools and colleges that there should be more debates and speech competitions, because I remember
that rational thinking should be promoted.
Exactly, because I remember that when I was in primary school, my father has requested the head teacher that I want my son, even it was a taught school, but my father requested, I want my son to particularly participate, because my father himself was a teacher, and he requested head teacher and our Bazme Adab in charge that I want my son to represent speeches and, you know, the extracurricular activities. I think we are lacking those in recent days. We need to add those activities in our curriculum.
We really need to inculcate so much in our youth, because primarily what I've noticed over a period of time is that kids are more concerned about getting an A grade rather than having a solid grip over the subject and on the concept for that instance.
I think it's a very touching area that you have touched now, because I noted that we are creating not the I will say creative mind. We might have a lot of parrots who can memorize a lot of books in their mind and they can transfer it into a piece of paper, but we have to create a creative mind and the generation who could lead us with the new ideas.
That's a very important point. I think that is the key area. Now, so moving on to the softer side, I mean, you were mentioning earlier before the program started that you're from Rawat, and Rawat is, I think, about 30 kilometers from Islamabad, if I'm not wrong,
exactly,
on the Lahore road. And so, coming from a small town, and you know, eventually where you are at this moment, that's a success story to me. So tell us about that, sir. How did you start, and what was in your mind? High aims.
I did my primary education from primary school. It's a taught school. I even visited this morning, and I gifted them a water cooler and purification system, that my fellow school fellows, they can have clean water at least. And then I did my matriculation exam from Rawat Higher Secondary School, and that same year I did in very colorful marks, and I achieved a very good record. I secured 95 marks in Islamic Studies out of 100.
Okay, that's
and I was, I think, number 8th in the federal board, and that was also honor for me. And after that, I did my graduation from FG Sir Syed College, Rawalpindi. And after that, I did my law degree from Muslim Law College, Rawalpindi.
And which year was that when you were in Sir Syed College?
I was in 92, from 92 to 95.
Okay, okay. All right.
I believe you were also Sir Syed.
No, because I know a lot of my friends are from that same college.
Thank you.
But I was, during that time, I was doing my BBA in Lahore.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, yeah. So that's your, yeah, that was your start. And now, since you just mentioned about clean drinking water, that is one area when I was interviewing Governor Punjab, Chaudhry Mohammad Sarwar Saab, and he mentioned that that is one area he's really focusing. So I think you have also touched the same area regarding clean drinking water. I think that is the basic necessity. If you give them clean drinking water, you're actually avoiding so many other diseases, waterborne diseases basically.
Exactly. Even upon my visit, I have interaction with Governor Punjab. We visited in the leadership of Lord Nazir Ahmed. Thank you very much, Lord Nazir Ahmed, if he's listening to this show. And
he's also visiting Pakistan, I've heard, during these days.
Yes, I think he has left now, but he was also leading our delegation with us, and I was part of that delegation. And particularly, I have talked about the issues faced by the my people, which is Union Council Rawat, and I've tried to highlight all the burning issues. And I'm sure present government, especially our Honorable Prime Minister, Mian Mohammed Nawaz Sharif, and also Honorable Chief Minister Punjab, Mian Shahbaz Sharif, I know that we comes under the jurisdiction of federal area, which is Islamabad, and I'm sure Prime Minister will give us a special attention. So when you talk about Rawat, that falls under NA 49 of Dr. Yes,
Tariq Fazil Chaudhry?
yes, we are.
Okay, I thought maybe it was either Raja Javed Akhlas or
we come under Islamabad jurisdiction.
Nisar Saab, because those two constitutions are very close.
It's quite complicated area, but yes, we comes under federal area. And it's worth mentioning here that we have sacrificed for our country. When CDA plan was prepared, we sacrificed with the lands, and when the land was required for the naval headquarters, our forefathers, my father has sacrificed. We have given lands very cheaply, and I will request our government, even we are ready to sacrifice, even our lives are there, because this motherland has given us a lot of things. But at least as a citizen of a welfare state, it is our entitlement that we should be treated in a similar way as a citizen living in Islamabad or in any other sector.
All right, sir. And what are the areas I think you really believe that should be talked about, or rather should be highlighted? Where do you believe the actual problems lie? I mean, in terms of the rural area, of the area. For example, you just mentioned about the clean drinking water. What else? I think in terms of health or in terms of the schools.
Would you believe that Rawat Union Council is consist upon, it's one example, more than 30,000 people, and we don't have hospital. And I have seen with my own eyes, there are a lot of people, when there was an emergency, when there was an accident on GT Road, when people rush towards hospital, in the way towards hospital, people have lost their lives.
Yes.
And to be honest, if we look at the record, it's a massive, it's unbelievable. We urgently need grounds, hospital, parks. So I think I will request you, sir, please do visit all these rural areas of Islamabad, and you will see that there is a huge difference of a life standard, that there is a huge difference between the life given to any citizen or our fellow brothers and sisters in Islamabad in the city area, and then when you go to the countryside or the rural area, you will feel a huge difference.
I totally understand, and there are so many issues in the suburbs of Islamabad, to be very precise. But now, talking about, since you've mentioned these areas, and most of these people who are living in UK primarily, other than Europe, are mostly either from Mirpur Khas or from this particular belt. So when we look at the overseas Pakistanis, an unbelievable amount was sent to Pakistan in terms of remittances. That was around $14 billion from people living abroad. And now obviously the government has a certain role to play. They have a certain, cost to take into account. But at the same time, when we look at the overseas Pakistanis, they're loaded people now. Don't you think that they also need to do a lot? Like you have just granted clean drinking water solution to your school. Similarly, they should do a little more.
I think what is happening, it's like a clap. It's a quite interesting example, but it's worth mentioning here. The clap is with the combination of two hands. When our government will give incentives and protection to the investment, and there will be improvement in the law and order. And I'll give you one example, that recently the previous government has introduced, when somebody is even from Pakistan, but they don't have a NADRA identification card, they have to pay a visa fee. Although they are Pakistanis or from Azad Kashmir or this region, but unfortunately they have to pay on the top Jerry FedEx fees. This is unfortunate. It's a joke. Why a middleman has been involved? Why not a citizen of a Pakistan who has a citizenship in his bloodship, although he don't have the paper?
That's a very legitimate demand, I would say. That's a very right concern at the same time. But unfortunately, when you go to the embassies, you know what happens out there. So it is not from us, it's from them, basically, to have a middleman, to sort of do the basic.
I'm not talking about visa for a UK. I'm talking about a visa from UK to Pakistan. So
in that case
exactly.
Also. All right.
They have introduced a middleman. It's called Jerry FedEx. What they do, they charge, I think, 45 to 50 pound. If I'm not correct, I can check the record, but they charge a handful amount. Why they need to introduce a middleman? This is a quite interesting question. What is their role? If I am filling application and I want to visit Pakistan, why I need to pay to a middleman? Why not I go to the window and I say, dear sir, this is my application, I want to visit my country, or so on. And I think this is also depriving us and our beloved country from a lot of investment. Because when you involve red tapes, you lose a lot of confidence, and at the same time you lose a lot of investments.
So you think that those hindrances should be eliminated? I mean, another important aspect, because you